Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys football. We are headed to the ACC as a game that if you told me we were previewing two top 20 teams as Syracuse goes on the road to Clemson, I'd call you crazy. Hand up, this was just one of the teams I was straight up wrong about heading into the summer. I mean, you look at this Syracuse team, they didn't really add any talent in the transfer portal. It was a very similar team coming back, and all of a sudden, this offense specifically has just put it together. It's a very much more explosive offense. Garrett Schrader finding some rhythm, and I think a lot of that has to do with Robert and I coming in and putting Garrett Schrader in spots that he's very, very successful in. He will have a tall task as they go up against one of the best defenses in the country, the Clemson Tigers. Before we get into it, though, again, I just want to say thank you guys for the support you guys have shown the channel. Again, if you like the content, you like talking ball, consider subscribing to the channel. We really do appreciate it. The support you guys have shown the last couple of months, it really does mean a lot. We love talking ball with you guys in the comment section. So if you do like the content, consider subscribing. Let's start talking some ball. Let's start with the Clemson Tigers because they're the more talented team. And I think pretty clearly if Clemson plays A-plus football, they will take care of business at home against Syracuse. Now, that being said, this Syracuse team is awfully dangerous. What I'm a little bit concerned about with this Clemson Tigers team, as good as DJ looks, you take a look at the numbers. We're looking at two of the most improved quarterbacks, not only in the ACC, but in the country from this year to last year. DJ completing 65% of his balls for 17 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He also looks much better carrying the football. This offensive line looks to be improved. The weapons on the outside, Antonio Williams, a true freshman, has looked absolutely awesome, giving Clemson a little bit of spark, a little bit of speed on the outside. They have like some longer guys like Bo Collins, Joseph Ngata. They kind of were missing that guy who's kind of the jitterbug in the slot. Antonio Williams has filled that hole really nicely. I think they have some really good tight ends. A concern I might have with this Clemson passing attack, and when you look at can Clemson cover 13.5 points against a Syracuse defense that's very good, is, I mean, you look at what DJ did against Florida State. Yeah, 15 to 23 for 203 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. A very efficient and solid day. 9 of those completions were to either Will Shipley or Phil Maffa out of the backfield. A lot of those swing passes, which I'm not totally against. But again, the downfield passing hasn't necessarily totally been there. But this Clemson offense has looked easily the best we've seen it since Trevor Lawrence was there. I mean, it is night and day more efficient than it is from last year to this year. And what they're doing, I think, is just kind of making it a little easier for DJ. They've identified the playmakers that they want the football in hands. Will Shipley, Phil Maffa, Antonio Williams. And they're getting those playmakers the ball. And you're seeing DJ much more comfortable. The ball's coming out a lot quicker. He's better at extending plays, going through his progressions. He's been way more accurate. And this Clemson Tigers offense is starting to kind of find his rhythm. Again, Will Shipley, we talked about as kind of being one of those breakout guys. As a true freshman last year, he showed flashes, but not necessarily consistent play. This year, he's been phenomenal. He averaged 6 yards a carry against a very good Florida State team. And I don't want to overlook that. I feel like the national media is like, oh, Clemson just checked the box. They went on the road to a Florida State team that I think is very talented. There's not many teams kind of in that 20 to 25 range in the AP rankings that I'm not taking Florida State on a neutral field. I think this Florida State team is legit. And I think that win was very good. And they're running the ball extremely well, averaging almost 5 yards per carry. Will Shipley is coming on. The offensive line looks good. Now, let's take a look at this Syracuse team, because this Syracuse team, again, we talked about the offense. It is night and day. You take a look at Garrett Schrader, who is bottom of not just the ACC, but country in completion percentage last year. He's completing almost 70% of his balls for 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. We knew you had Sean Tucker, who's averaging 5.5 yards per carry. Garrett Schrader getting it done on the ground, but the biggest question mark we had coming in for this Syracuse offense was who's the playmaker on the outside? You lose a guy like Taj Harris, who didn't really play much last year, but was kind of that spark plug. 6'5", Arande Gadsden, the second, has been an absolute freak. And if you look at a matchup standpoint, what has Clemson really struggled with? The only offense that really gave Clemson a lot of problems on the offense is Wake Forest. And what did they do? They attacked Clemson in the secondary vertically. They have some inexperienced guys who are they're banged up in the secondary and kind of forced to play some inexperienced guys. And Wake Forest was just throwing the ball out to A.T. Perry, who's 6'4", and saying, go make a play in the football. Know who else has very good length, 6'5", but very good ball skills when that ball's in the air? Gas in the second. You watch back at NC State, 8 catches for, I believe, over 100 yards. He was the guy. Take a look at that box score from this Saturday. 8 catches for 141 yards. The next closest was Sean Tucker with 4 catches. So that offense runs through them. And if you can establish some sort of run game, which you were able to do last year in the Carrier Dome, bring some safeties in and get that one-on-one matchup down the field with Gadsden on one of those inexperienced Clemson defensive backs, I think that's where Syracuse can find a little bit of success. And on the defensive side of the ball, Clemson loves to get the ball out to their running backs on the outside. Well, good news for Syracuse. I think they match up really well there. I mean, Garrett Williams on the outside tackles extremely well. But more importantly, they have some very, very good linebackers who are very good at going sideline to sideline. Mikel Jones, Marlo Wax, two guys who are very, very good tacklers in space. And if they're going to try to get the swing passes going and the flat routes going to Will Shipley and Phil Maffa, I think Syracuse is really they have the personnel that kind of stop that. And from a matchup standpoint, I do like a lot of where you're looking at where Clemson is going to want to attack you on the offense side of the ball. I think Syracuse has a very good chance at slowing down this Clemson offense. Now, getting to the pick, I'm not taking Clemson to cover 13 points. I think Clemson wins this football game, especially at home. This offense has been much more efficient than it was last year. I think Syracuse will kind of struggle dealing with that Clemson defensive line. That being said, I don't think they cover 13.5 points. So I think Clemson wins. If I had to take a pick, again, Clemson has kind of been my cash cow for the last couple of weeks. Vegas has been setting those lines at 4.5, 6.5, kind of inside of a touchdown. I'd take Clemson any day of the week there because they're a team that's going to kind of strangle you out on defense, but they're scoring enough points and where they're going to cover those spreads. 13.5 points, 2 touchdowns against the Syracuse defense that I think is very tough, a Syracuse offense that will be able to score 14 to 21 points. That's asking Clemson to score, 35, maybe 40 points. That seems a little bit high for this Clemson offense, especially when you're talking about a very sound, a very complete Syracuse defense. I'm probably not betting this game in general, but if I did have a lean, it is Syracuse to keep this one within 2 touchdowns. Again, this Syracuse team is – I don't think the national media, similar to teams like Kansas or Illinois, I don't think the national media or Vegas is quite ready to have that conversation that Syracuse is a legit top 25 team. They are. And you look, very impressive win against Purdue. They looked good against NC State. I know Devin Leary wasn't playing, but that NC State defense is still no joke. Devin Leary hasn't been that great to begin with for NC State. And Syracuse handled business pretty soundly, even though they probably didn't play their best football. So lean is Syracuse plus 13.5. I also think the under could be a good play. I think you have 2 really good defenses, and I kind of struggle to see both teams moving the ball. My lean would be Syracuse to keep it close. Clemson probably winning this game again. I have a future on Clemson to win the ACC, so kind of need Clemson to take care of business here. I don't necessarily need them to cover the 13.5. I'm not betting them to cover the 13.5. Again, I appreciate you guys to checking us out. We appreciate all the support. That'll do it for a preview. Again, if you like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate y'all. We'll talk to y'all next time. Peace.